might go a little bit more of a formal intro today because it's starting to get formal. We have a repeat guest today, a repeat special guest, Robi McDonald. Sir Robi McDonald, I think I said last time.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know if I've earned that title yet, but I'll take it.
I call everybody sir. Just go mic down a little bit.
Down a little bit, yeah. Beautiful face.
Well, I had Danny Mendoza on the other day, and she was kind of like half hiding behind the mic. And then I was trying to because it's weird if you can only see half of someone's face.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a really, really good podcast, and everybody should go listen to it.
Yeah, definitely.
And Danny will make you feel pretty weak because she's very strong.
Yeah, but also better about yourself because she's just a lovely person.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say is we're going to do probably maybe a little bit more of a formal intro.
Yeah.
But I just kind of had a little bit of blank there. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to our major sponsor, Aona, and Benny Eisman and his brother are on.
Thank you, Aona.
None of this would be possible if this situation would be possible if it wasn't for Benny. So if you do have any podcast needs, I would highly recommend that you see Benny and see if you can get a similar spot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what are we gonna talk about today, mate? So we are round 2 of many. Sorry, volume 2. Round 2, volume 8. I think.
8, yeah, my second crack.
Yes, yeah, second crack of many. So last time we got into a bit about you.
Yep.
And, why you do what you do. Today we're going to probably talk a little bit more shit, cover the real serious stuff like favourite Benji moments, which we left everybody hanging at the end of the last one.
Yeah, that is definitely the most serious topic we've
discussed. Yeah, let's get stuck into it. I'm going to make sure my laptop's... So what's going on, mate?
Yeah, not too much. Actually, just recovered from some foot surgery that I had in between our last chat and this chat.
That's one of my little points there, training through injury. But continue. How was the surgery?
Yeah, no, it was pretty. It all went pretty smoothly. It's an interesting one because for the majority of people, when you require a surgical intervention, you're probably in a state where you're not able to, do things well, and that's why having the surgery. If you're... Was it brain surgery for you?
Yeah,
they needed to add a brain.
Lobotomy.
No, so I had about almost 3 years ago playing rugby, I had this ankle injury, and it was kind of not necessarily misdiagnosed, but underdiagnosed at the time. I probably should have got a scan and was advised, there's no point getting a scan.
Oh, that's been a little bit weak, mate.
Yeah.
Just play on. For the boys.
Yeah, well, I was going to go back to playing, but then we went into a lockdown. And anyway, so skip forward, I started getting more and more and more into my running and my endurance stuff, and I noticed there was something wrong with my foot. Things weren't going as well. They just weren't working. And then I realized I had a bump where there wasn't supposed to be a bump, and that the bump moved. So I got an X-ray. Turns out it was...
You're pregnant.
Yeah. It was in my ankle, so my ankle was pregnant. Got an X-ray. Turns out there was a piece of bone in there. And then it took another 2 years to get someone to finally be we should cut that out. Mm-hmm. So I finally got it cut out just over 2 weeks ago, and it was a pretty simple procedure.
Were you fully under?
Yeah, fully under anesthetic.
Had you been you had surgery before?
Yeah, so I had my ACL done. I went fully under, but I was...
Such a weird experience, eh?
It is a weird experience.
You could really get rid of someone quite easy with that.
Oh yeah, I've heard some stories of anaesthetists that have not done well, and usually it ends up in a pretty stressful period of time.
I went under and I didn't know that. It was just my ignorance, I guess. But did I tell you about when I had surgery for my wrist?
Yeah, you said you didn't think you needed to go fully under.
No. So anyway, we'll get to that. You continue your story. So
yeah.
Did you keep the piece of bone?
No, they wouldn't let me keep it.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
It's biological waste. I was we're all biological waste.
Yeah, true.
But yeah,
that's how deep we're getting today.
Yeah, but I got some...
Robbie's got a bit of an existential crisis.
Yeah, after the surgery. But yeah, so I just got the stitches out, and I've started running again. So nice. I went less than 2 weeks between surgery and running again. So The surgeon said it was okay. I'm not going against.
You got that David Goggins mindset, mate.
I'm not going against what the surgeon said. He said, yeah, if you want to run, that's okay. I've only done 2 1K efforts, very easy.
Nice. And are we back on? Actually, that's going to be a good topic. The K a day.
Yeah, we're not back. Well, the intention was, but I'm also moving at the moment. So yesterday was I'd fully intended to run, and then all of a sudden it was like 6:30, and I was like, I'd been packing for like 4 hours, and I was like, yeah, it's not going to happen today.
David Goggins of you, mate.
It's all right. I'm going to go for a run today. It'll be half an hour, and then I'm back onto the training program as of next week.
Nice, very very good.
Yeah.
Cool. Can I tell you about my surgery?
Yeah, go ahead. I want to know more about that than my surgery.
No, it's more exciting. So I was in a car accident when I was 12 or 13.
Yeah.
And I had a piece of glass. I won't get too much into the car accident.
I think I know that story.
Yeah. Long story short, I was driving. It was on a farm. It didn't end up really well.
How old were you again?
I was 13. I grew up in the bush. My mum started driving, I think, when she was 10. She lived out of town, and she would have to drive her brothers and sisters to the bus stop to go to school.
And she was 10?
Yeah.
How old were her brothers and sisters?
Like a couple of years younger than her.
Wow.
Yeah, and then she did that like the whole time they were out there. So like I started driving late. But it's the bush. Like, like I think I would have started driving. No, I would have started driving it probably.
But you're just driving on like farms and stuff.
Yeah, never on a road.
Yeah.
I think I would have started driving probably at maybe 11 or 12. Actually, funny story. When I went home recently for Christmas, Mel and I were just leaving, and my brother and his wife were driving back along the same road, and it's just like in a new housing estate, so there's never any traffic on it.
Yeah.
And the car was kind of like swerving, and I thought it was like they were way up, and we were driving directly towards them, and I thought they were just messing around, whatever. And I was like, oh, maybe like Coop's driving, my nephew, who's 2.
Yeah.
And then
he was
pulled up beside us, and Coop's put his hands on the wheel sitting in Jenna's lap.
How good.
And
I did that. I did that when I was like, my dad put me on his lap when I was real young, like 3 or 4.
So good.
I started riding my dad's motorbike. I reckon he taught me at maybe like 10 or 11. And it was a full-size motorbike.
Yeah, right.
I remember going to my mate's farm like a couple of years later, and he was like, oh, we've got like motorbikes. I was like, oh, cool, can I go on them? And he was like, oh, I'm not sure. And I was like, how big are they? And he's like, oh, they're just little. And I'm like, mate, I've been riding a full-size motorbike for 3 or 4 years now.
Nice.
And I got all my limbs.
Yeah.
I'm doing all right.
That's good.
So yeah, the surgery?
Yeah, so anyway, I had a car accident, and long story short, I had a piece of glass in my hand, and the surgery was I had a piece of glass in my hand, and the car accident was pretty chaotic, and my mate was worse off than me. So he was the priority when we went to the hospital, and it was like a really small town. So hospital small, he had to go to the next hospital, the hospital in the town across, which was a base hospital. And they quickly, stitched my hand up and cleaned it out, and, it was sweet. And then a couple of weeks later, it like pretty much healed up, and I had the stitches out, and I've got actually a piece of bone there, and I think it's just part of the joint. It protrudes quite a bit, and it's the same on the other side. And I was like, oh, maybe it's just something like that. And there was a lump there, and then after a while, the skin had scarred up, and then I could start like moving it around, and I was like, oh, that's a piece of glass in
That's
there.
when you know there's a
It
problem.
has to be a piece of glass. And they thought it might have been a bone, but there was no pain in the area initially because it was quite chaotic and stressful, and adrenaline's gone. Anyway, so it was there, and then everybody's like, oh, go get it taken out. And I was like, 13 or 14 years old with a mad scar and a piece of glass in my arm at 6. So I was like, cool, I'm going to keep it. But I did try to cut it out myself because I was like, oh, that's fine. And so I had a good few cracks at trying to cut it out.
It is so country. I just try to do it myself.
And then everybody said that it would, and even the doctor, I think, because we did go back, I had to go to the hospital for something or whatever, and then I was like, oh, I got this, and they're like, oh, it might work its way out. If it's not doing anything, don't worry about it. Yeah. So I just left it there, and it was just below the joint, so it literally never worried me at all.
You got really good range of motion. You'll be sweet.
Yeah, that's it. And the only time it would is if I had lifting straps on and it would press on it. So then I would just put it in a slightly different position. Yeah. It was not fine, and it was fine. And then you could pick it up, like you could pull it and move it around and you could feel the sharp edges on it. But because there's a pretty gnarly scar, you won't be able to see it on camera or see it on Spotify. I would have had some nerve damage there. So I don't have it. I can feel, but it's not normal.
Yeah.
So I could like hit it as hard as I could and like hurting my hand. The glass didn't do anything. I could feel a little bit of a prick, but it was fine. Anyway, fast forward to nearly probably a year ago. It looked like it. So there was always a slight little lump there, and then it looked like it had it was like a pimple kind of thing, and I scratched it, and then I was like, oh, maybe it's like going to come out. So then I'd like tried to like pull it out again. Didn't learn my lesson. 17 years ago, and then because I tried to do that, and I was like, oh, I'm trying to pull it out. And then it must have just got like a little bit of stuff in it and it got infected. And then 2 days later, it was like it blown up and my hand was all red and stuff like that. And I just bent my wrist like this and it popped. Ooh. And this was at 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe 4:30 in the morning, getting ready before work. I was like, I don't think I should go to work. I think I'm going to go because last thing I wanted to happen was it get infected and lose my hand. So I was like, now I will be sensible 17 years later after it already got infected. Anyway, so I went to the RPA. For some reason, the busiest emergency room in Sydney was the best idea for me to go to. Because it was just like the only hospital I thought, because James went to Sydney Uni. And I was like, hospital, RPA. It's
also not that far from Zetland.
No, it wasn't that far. And I was like, I don't actually know. And just from the way my head works is like, I just like to go to familiar places, particularly in something like that. So I was like, I knew there was is it Prince of Wales in Randwick?
Randwick,
yeah. But I was like, I don't know how to get there, so it's just not for me. So I was like, cool, go there. 5 o'clock in the morning. Got there, waiting room. There was a few people in the waiting room. Actually, the guy who was on the desk went to Newington.
Random.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but James taught him.
Huh.
Yeah.
So he would have been around my time as well.
Yeah. He would have been maybe a touch younger than you, but probably about So you would probably know him if you saw him. I can kind of remember his face. I don't know his name, but I gave him my driver's license, and he's like, "Welsh, you don't have a brother, do you?" Because I look somewhat similar to James.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. He's like, it's not James, is it? And I was like, is he a teacher? And I was like, yeah, he is. He's like, oh, he used to teach James Welsh. He works at Newington. Anyway.
Do you get sick of that?
No, because my fame supersedes his.
Yeah.
So I've been published in a couple of magazines and Men's Health and GQ and stuff like that. So like people recognize me before they see him.
Yeah.
Plus I've got bigger legs.
That is correct. And we used to call him Quad God. So if you've got bigger legs.
Yeah. I reckon it's just that you guys didn't squat. Anyway.
Yeah, we were teenagers. Of course.
Anyway, so we've gone to the emergency room and I was like, cool, this is going to be a 5-minute job. They'll look at it. They'll get a scalpel, nick it. And anyway, so the doctor looked at it and it was quite swollen. And he's like, oh, so, told everybody the story. And they're like, it's been in there for 17 years. I was like, yes, it's been in there for 17 years. Like, you sure it's been in there for 17 years? Like, yes.
Yep, I'm positive.
I remember it. Anyway, so did that, had to get some x-rays and then had to get an ultrasound. No, I wasn't pregnant like you were. And that's the second time I've had an ultrasound and I won't tell you about the first.
Was it when you were pregnant?
Yeah. I won't tell the first on air. Anyway, so had that happen. And then they were like, oh, we might actually, after that, they looked at it a bit more and they're like, oh, it's actually probably a little bit more serious than we thought initially. So you're probably going to have surgery. We'll see if we can get you in today. So I had to wait in the RPA waiting room for like 12 hours.
That sucks.
Yeah. Couldn't drink, couldn't eat, had my phone. Luckily, I took my Kindle because I was like, I might be here for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll take a Kindle and I'll read. Luckily, I took that. But then I couldn't do much with this hand because it was swollen and red and hurt. And then they put a cannula in my left elbow. So I couldn't move this arm. I couldn't move this arm. And I'm just walking around RPA waiting room, which is not that big for the emergency department. Have you been there before?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
I have a story about a long time spent there, but I won't tell that one on air.
Okay, cool. That can be on round 3. So anyway, you see everything come in and out of the waiting room there at RPA, and like some people getting pretty aggressive with nurses and stuff like that. And it was shit as well too, because not that I would like just jump in for no reason, but if I'm sitting there and this like small nurse is getting abused by this crackhead, and I'm like, I can't move my arms.
I mean, you could slap him with your bad hand, like just crack him across the head.
Yeah, true. Anyway, that was shit. But I thought, because it's just on my hand, I was like, I'm going to be awake for this. Cool. And then, so they've got me ready. Actually, one of Jake McKay's old clients was one of the nurses. And he's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, hey, like, that was random. Anyway, so went in, and then lying on the bed, they're like, we're just going to inject this into the cannula. And then woke up a couple hours later just going, what the fuck just happened? Because I just, like, I'd signed the paperwork and stuff like that, but I was just like, it's on my hand, I'm going to be awake for it. And then, and I wasn't awake for it.
Yeah, it was interesting, but I was more used to it like this time.
Yeah.
I bet I get real chatty when I wake up from anesthetic. I don't know, it's happened twice. I just wake up and all I want to do is chat.
Just to make up for lost time.
Yeah.
How long were you under?
I think it was like just over an hour.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so that was like, probably 50,000 words that I didn't get out in that time. So I had to catch up a little bit.
I must tell people I'm an ultra runner or a runner.
We were talking about the nurse had a pet snake. We were talking about his pet snake.
Speaking of reptiles, Benny here likes a reptile. He's got. I won't actually say that. Not like he actually is he likes picking up snakes and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. The nurse had a pet snake?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I don't have to, to be honest, I don't remember that too much.
Okay.
I had just woken up from anesthetic.
Yeah, good story.
Sorry.
Let's sit here
in
silence.
Let's move on.
Cool. So, what else are we going to chat about, mate? We got actually an interesting one. It's at the top of the page notes. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your experiment with wearing wearables.
Yeah. So if you don't know me, and if you're listening on Spotify, sorry, but if you're on YouTube,
Big wearables fan.
I got my Garmin Fenix 6 Solar.
How much that cost?
My dad bought it for me. It was a birthday present.
Nice.
And a Whoop 4.0.
And I have a Fitbit.
And the Whoop, I'm still on 3 months because I recommend my clients to get them.
Cool.
And then when I refer them, and when they refer them, I get a free month. So
maybe we might have to get Whoop as a sponsor.
They sponsor some. They sponsor some big podcasts. So it would be great.
This is a big podcast.
It is. It's a huge podcast. The world just doesn't know it yet.
That's it.
Yeah. So a couple of years back, about 2 years ago, I decided to do a little experiment because I was training for an Ironman at the time, lots of strength training, 8 or 9 PT sessions a day. I was burning through a lot of energy, and I was like, oh, it might be a good idea to actually because at the time I had a different Garmin, but I also owned an Apple Watch.
Mm-hmm.
Still own the Apple Watch, but don't wear it. And I was like, I might just put all 3 of these on and just compare the results and do a little bit of an experiment of why we can't trust the calories burned part of wearables, because I don't wear wearables to know how many calories I burned. I wear for a whole bunch of other stats because I'm a data nerd. But
what are some of the stats?
My resting heart rate, I'm pretty obsessed with. I want it to be as low as possible. Went down to 36 when I was under with anesthetic.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
My
they were worried.
Yeah. My blood pressure, when I went in the morning, it was pretty high because I was stressed and I'd had coffee and stuff like that. And they did it and I was like, oh, that's a bit high. I'm actually somewhat offended by that. You sure that's right? Anyway, they're like, oh, it's kind of normal given the circumstances. Like, right, it makes sense. And then when I come out of surgery, you got the monitor there. Yeah. And I hadn't drank any water all day. And then for 10, 12 hours, plus then another 3 or 4 hours. Yeah. And it was literally almost non-existent. Yeah. And it kept beeping every minute or two because they're monitoring you.
Being you need salt.
Yeah. and fluid as well too.
Yeah.
And then the nurse is like, "Oh, your blood pressure's a little bit lower. We'll give you some apple juice and water." And then within 2 minutes, it popped back up to normal. Crazy.
It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah. So your resting heart rate?
Yeah, so resting heart rate variability, or HRV, which is a fairly decent it is an easy way to monitor your stress.
Mm-hmm. I don't understand fully what it is, how it's calculated.
So when heart rate variability, so it's essentially like your heart rate doesn't beat like consistently. So you'll have your like heart rate, so like let's say 50 beats per minute. That does not mean that, or let's say 60 beats per minute is really easy for maths. That does not mean your heart beats once every second. It might go like boom, 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 boom. Like there's gaps. And so those gaps is the heart rate variability. And then it's measured in an M per S, which something per second. I've never like bothered to really check that out. But essentially it is the how variable your heart rate is within a minute, basically. And the reason being is that if you are in a highly stressed state, regardless of what your heart rate is, your heart rate variability is going to be quite low, because your heart's going to be going quite consistently to make sure that you're pumping blood around. So like, if we look at it from an evolutionary perspective, if you're on the African savannah and you're being chased by a lion or hunting caribou,
reference to the last podcast.
Good callback. Or you've got, probably not on the African savannah, but or you've got like, you're fighting in a war against another tribe. You're in a high stress state. Your body needs to be providing blood and nutrients and fuel to your muscles to utilize that to be able to do your fight or flight. So it's constant. So the heart's going quite quick, and it's not like being variable. When you're quite relaxed, rest and digest, very parasympathetic, you don't need as much, and you want to preserve energy. So your heart rate doesn't beat as consistently. So if your heart rate variability, so the amount that your heart rate is varying over a given amount of time, is quite high, it determines how like relaxed you are.
Okay. So what would a score be? What would a good score be, and what would a bad score be?
It's a bit hard
relative to the person.
It's very relative to the person. For instance, like for me, like even from like over time, like last August, I was in a pretty stressed state. I was like quite sick. I was sort of just managing a few things. And my heart rate variability plummeted, and so I was averaging like 50.
Okay.
So, but then if I got it to like 60, I felt like a superhero.
And is it a score out of 100? Did you say?
No, it's not a score. It's just a measure. It's like, so in theory it could go up.
So it's more of an average than.
More of an average. Yeah. So mine went down to like 50-ish, but now I'm sitting at like 80 or 90 quite consistently, because I'm in a pretty good spot. But if it goes down, I went down to 50 the other day, and I felt like I'd run into a brick wall. I did not feel great. Yeah. So even for the person, it can vary. But again, like for instance, my client Kyle, his sits at like, when he's fully recovered, it's like 130, 140.
Okay.
When he's feeling not great, it's like 80. And for me, when I'm fully recovered, it's like low 100s. And when I'm feeling average, it's like 60. So it depends on the person. But typically, higher is better.
Yeah. Is there a correlation between being more aerobically fit and it being higher, or?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few things that go into it. And one of the things that Luke Lehman has mentioned in the past is that it's not an absolute measure. So you shouldn't go, my heart rate variability is high, therefore I'm good. Yeah. It's a data that you can use to determine an outcome. Yeah. It's not the outcome itself. Yeah. But typically the more relaxed kind of like you are, the more like the less stressed you are. If you have a higher VO2 max, higher aerobic efficiency, like if you are fitter, typically it will be higher than if you are less fit. Yeah. So if you were to start wearing a Whoop and it gives you X, this is your average HRV is like 70, and then you spend 12 months just working really hard on yourself, being really fit, all that kind of stuff, it would go up. Yeah. Your average would go up. But typically the other behaviors that you would also start picking up, and the behaviors you'd start letting go of, usually the ones that you start picking up are also going to contribute to a higher HRV. So let's say you stop drinking alcohol, stop consuming, like highly processed gluttonous foods or as much. You can still have them, but you're not having them as much. You're sleeping better. You're recovering better. You're living a lower stress lifestyle. From a hormonal perspective, you're in a better area. Your HRV will start to climb regardless. And you can be very fit and have a shit HRV if you are under heaps of stress as well.
Yeah. So it's and you said at the start, it's a good measure for measuring stress.
Yeah, that's what I use it for.
Or your allostatic load.
Exactly, yeah. So low HRV, lower than what your average is, not as good. Higher than your average is better. If the way I say to my clients is like, if we want to look at trends with this, and then outliers. Yeah. So a trend is my HRV is getting better. Today it was real low. Okay, something we did yesterday indicated a drop today. Yeah. But generally we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And it's just a snapshot of that moment in time, which doesn't mean that it'll always be that. Same as if it's anything like your sleep or your weight or whatever, your performance on a given day.
Yeah. It's Whoop will give you an average for the week or an average for overnight. You'll wake up and always say, this is your HRV. Yeah. It's not your HRV that exact moment. Yeah. One of the things that Apple Watch does and Garmin does a little bit better than Whoop is that it's not, I don't think it's as accurate, but it can give you this is what your HRV did for the last 4 hours.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can see the trend.
Yeah. One good point on that in terms of stress management. I had Matt on last week or the week before, Matt Duncan, and he was talking about one of the things that he's seen the most dramatic change, or one of the things that's been the most influential on how he coaches, and he was being somewhat modest because he's obviously a really good coach, but he said that he's probably got the better results from recommending that his clients use a Whoop to start to see how to manage stress and things like that. And I think one thing that people don't always understand is our body perceives stress all stress very much the same. Yeah. So whether we're sitting here having a really intense conversation and your stress goes up, or we're squatting.
Which it will.
It will. Yeah. It's very stressful.
We're having a good conversation here, but our stress levels have gone up.
Have gone up, yeah. So everything essentially is a stressor, which is a good thing. Yeah. It's just that when something is chronic, it's usually the problem, and when it's chronic and too high for a long period of time. So
that's when issues start to pop up.
Yeah, that's when issues start to pop up. I had a client recently, and we'd worked initially I'll go back. I had a client recently. He injured his back deadlifting, and
sure it wasn't just you?
It wasn't me. Yeah. Actually, my back injury helped me. My many back injuries any injury that I have always helps me help my clients. Which is, I always say that, unfortunately, but fortunately enough, I have been injured a lot. Probably more than. Not everybody, but more than my close.
More than most.
More than my clients. But I do have one client who has been more injured than me. My client Mark, the Scottish guy. Yeah. He sat down and told me his injuries the first time I met him. And I was like, what?
How are you alive?
Yeah, genuinely. Anyway, so my client, he had a back injury, deadlifting. And when it happened, I was like, cool, just tell me what was going on at work, how are you feeling with this and that. And it turned out he was really, really, really stressed at work. And then we'd previously helped him fix a back injury or back pain that he constantly had for a long period of time, got him up to really, really strong. And, when he first started, he was deadlifting 40 kilos. Now he went before the back injury recently, he was up to deadlifting 120 kilos for 5. And it wasn't that it was the load that was too heavy, because he could execute it well on any given day. But I was like, how was work? And he's like, work was really stressful. I was like, were you concentrating were you thinking about work when you were doing it, or were you thinking about the cues that we've got you success up to this point, being stronger than you've ever been? And he's like, yeah, my head wasn't in it. Yeah. And so that load of stress will obviously affect your mental state, but then it'll obviously affect how your body responds to another stressor. So a deadlift at, once you're getting over your body weight or any number, is going to be more stressful than no deadlift. Yeah. And then if you go stress on top of stress, on top of stress, on top of stress, you can't think, well, your body's going to go, I'm going to give you a signal to slow the fuck down because you're going to hurt yourself. And so, yes, he had pain and an injury, but we've been able to fix it, and he's not in pain anymore. But the signal was there.
It was a stress, yeah.
It was a stressor, and it's that allosteric load of the compounding stress, compounding stress, compounding stress. Anyway, to your point.
It is funny that I actually saw a post from Lane Norton the other day, and he was talking about how, like, he's in his 40s and is, deadlifting over 300 kilos.
He's got the worst deadlift setup.
It's hilarious. I love watching it, and people make fun of him, and he's like, I don't care.
I know. I hate it so much.
But he was his deadlift setup aside, he's a very, very strong man, especially for his age,
and ridiculously smart.
And ridiculously smart. And he listed some of the injuries that he's had, and he's had some crazy like back injuries as well. And then he said, like, these are the best ways to. He says, like, is no amount of like, stretching or like, foam rolling or blah, blah, blah is ever going to be what's going to stop injuries. What stop injuries is minimizing stress. It's sleeping well. Yeah. It's not consuming alcohol. It's like blah, blah, blah. That's what's going to minimize injuries. And it's like, if you see the people who are like always injured, it's because they don't manage the stuff outside of the physiology, like the physical tissue. Yeah. They don't manage their stress physiology and their mental physiology. It is funny as well is that I'll often have people who say like, I'm not stressed, but then when you look at the data, you're like, your body is actually in a state of stress right now.
You're constantly stressed.
Like,
it's normal.
Yeah, it's like you are fit, but your blood pressure is far too high for who you are. Your resting heart rate is far too high, and your heart rate variability is just bouncing up and down and up and down. It's like I'm not saying like being stressed isn't bad. It's like
it's not your personality. That's the thing. You don't have to identify as stressed.
And you also should not identify as stressed because it is merely like it's no different to being like, I am tired. Like, I am tired because I had a shit sleep last night. I am stressed because I had a shit sleep last night.
That's not you though.
Yeah.
But it's one testament to the body of how good it gets at adapting and dealing with stress, and it will change what is normal to allow you to feel normal at being stressed. Yeah. So that's why then they can perceive it as I'm not that stressed until they realize what not stressed feels like. And we always stress. There's always stresses. It's actually a really good thing as well too.
Yeah, it is good for you. Yeah.
We literally wouldn't adapt.
We would not have survived if it was not for stress.
For stresses.
Yeah.
But what's the
specific adaptation to impose demand.
And then we have eustress and distress. Yeah. Eustress is eustressed. Yeah. Eustress is a good stressor. Yeah. Training for an acute period of time is a good stress. Distress is that chronic and constant. Yeah. So obviously, like what Matt said, like I found that introducing whoops, to me personally, but to like friends and clients as well, I've only ever seen, most of the time I've seen quite a good end result from that, is that there is a decrease in the total amount of stresses. Mm-hmm. I kind of used to say this, and then the guy, Rory Warnock, who we had come in and do a development, he's a breathwork coach, but he's also an ultra marathon runner. Mm-hmm. And he made this comment in the development, and it was really funny because I've made this comment prior to that as well. And he stole it off you?
No, I think it's actually just, you just pick it up anyway. There's two types of people that get whoops. There's people who get a whoop and stop drinking, and there's people who get a whoop and take the whoop off when they go out drinking. Because you start to understand the effect that alcohol has on you. And the thing that stopped me from like I still have a drink every so often, but the thing that reduced the amount of alcohol I come in, and also when I do drink, I make sure I have nothing that I need to do for the next 7 days.
And you take your whoop off.
And I take my whoop off.
I have one caveat to that.
Yeah.
Chad told me that whiskey makes you healthier, and can't believe that Chad would lie to me, so I have to believe that is the only caveat to it.
But it's also like, how are you, like if you're having a couple of whiskeys at your house or with your mates sitting around a fire, is that bad for you? No. If you're going out and binge drinking every weekend and being at someone's house until 5 a.m. sitting around a coffee table doing who knows what.
And losing someone's Raiders hat.
Yeah. I owe Matt a Raiders hat.
Actually, we're going to come back to that, but we didn't actually, in the intro, that's...
Why we're wearing Derek Carr jerseys.
This is the Derek Carr Volume 8.
Derek Carr.
Yeah.
We should have done it for Volume 4.
Volume 4.
Yeah.
Well, it's twice as good because we've got...
2 4s is 8.
Look at that. The universe is aligned.
It worked.
So, in terms of as we get into the alcohol, I guess, no, it doesn't in alcohol in its if you look at alcohol and its effects on the body in its most objective form, it will never make anything better other than a social situation.
Yeah.
It makes every single thing in the body worse.
Yeah. Net.
Bad.
Negative.
It's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect your liver function, which is going to affect how you digest food, which is going to
how your metabolism works.
Metabolism works. The biggest thing is probably going to be one thing that I learned, and we can talk about as well, is because you've read the book Why We Sleep.
Yeah.
One thing I learned, it limits while your body is metabolizing alcohol, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, while your body's metabolizing alcohol, it will not go into REM sleep, or it will negatively affect that.
Basically.
Yeah. So if you're not getting REM sleep,
you're not recovering.
Your
brain's actually not recovering as well.
Your brain's not recovering, and
you're not learning. So if you learn something in a day and then you go out and get pissed, you will forget that.
Yeah. And you're also not... It limits your abilities to deal with social and emotional interactions within the next day. So it's always the later part of sleep as well too. So that's why...
There's a stat, I can't remember the exact, so like I'm going to probably say something that's not going to sound amazingly politically correct, but it is to the point that he made in the book, that it's like they've done, there was a study where they looked at like people who like their behaviors after a big night after consuming lots of alcohol, and they mimicked those who had like Asperger's or autism.
Right. Yeah.
So there was like actual if you were to go out, like if you were drink chronically, like if you were an alcoholic, you will start to move towards having like not diagnosed, but some degree of like a social disability, because your brain is losing its ability to properly function, especially when it comes to social interactions.
Yeah. But then it's a cycle of, well, you need, obviously it can happen over a longer period of time, and for some people it might not be exaggerated, but you need the alcohol to have the social interaction, and then it kind of like will then feed itself.
And then it's like, what's the... James Smith is big on it. It's like whenever he used to go out on a date, he had to drink alcohol because he did not feel comfortable being like with someone he didn't know that well, unless he was boozed. Yeah. And I mean, for instance, like,
I think everybody's done that.
But I mean, obviously yes, but like, I mean, for Jamie, like, I don't think we drank alcohol together for the first 2 or 3 months.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference.
And like after getting a whoop, my alcohol intake plummeted considerably, and I will very easily go like 3 or 4 months without drinking, and it becomes I'm not giving up alcohol. I still like to have that fun social interaction part of it, but for instance, last year I didn't really booze at all from the end of July until November, and then November it was just a few social things, finishing up with an overseas holiday. And I got back from that overseas holiday, it was like, I'm off again, and it was...
Because it doesn't do anything good for you. And I think one thing as well too that people don't realise, particularly guys and girls, but for guys, it decreases your testosterone.
Yeah.
It makes you worse as a male. And it will increase your estrogen.
Yeah, like
I think it's like it depresses test for 3 to 4 days after. So if you go out on a Saturday, you don't have normal test by Wednesday.
Yeah.
So your chest workout on Monday, not very effective.
No.
You're not going to do legs on Tuesday because you got low test.
Yeah.
You're not going to do legs on Wednesday because your test is coming back, and you're probably then going to be wanting to then do arms and feel good about yourself.
And then
so you've
Thursday,
done arms 2 days in a row,
and then
chest.
It's Thursday and you go out for a beer, and then Friday you go out for beers, and then Saturday you go out for beers.
Yeah. So you end up drinking heaps of beers, low test. I'm talking shit there.
You're talking, but like if you want to, like, you don't need to be optimal. Optimal is non-existent because we're humans, and humans are not designed to be optimal.
No, it's relative to the context.
The context, but like if you were someone who's like, I want to live as healthy as I can for as long as I can, and I want to perform at my best in my social relationships, my business, my work, my training, blah blah blah. Alcohol is not going to help you get there. And when people say to me like, actually, Hormozy has a good line he posted about it, and it was something like, if someone asks you to like do something that's like, it's not saying you, or if it doesn't help me achieve, don't do it. But it's like, if you really, really want to achieve something and you don't want anything to get in the way, if someone's giving you shit for not doing things that are going to stop you achieving that, they're not there to like support you. They're there to bring you down.
Yeah, it's such a yeah, absolutely. If it stands in the way of the thing you're doing it, you are wasting time. If it's something you see valuable, then that's sweet. Go for it. But if it limits you, and then you complain about not being where you want to be, then you know there's an answer there.
Yeah.
That is a very simplified way to look at it. Making those changes again are simple, but more challenging in actual practice.
Yeah, in a social context, yes, and I understand that. I will never tell someone you have to give up alcohol. But if someone's like, I'm 100% determined to achieve this goal, and they're also boozing every weekend, it's like
you're not. Your actions, your actions are speaking louder than your words.
It's like if you want me to honestly tell you to do something, it would be if you pull that alcohol out, you will probably start to see results instantly.
Yeah. One thing that I get clients to do, I like the visualization of it. It's like, well, if you fast forward 12 weeks from now, and let's say you're drinking a lot at the moment, you've got some shit habits and stuff like that, and you're training a little bit, but you're not where you want to be.
Yeah.
Fast forward 12 weeks from now, looking back, if you didn't drink and then you did your 10,000 steps a day, you train 4 times a week, and you progressively overload, you ate your protein, and you didn't drink in that time, and you slept, 8 hours a night. Tell me what you could achieve in that time. What would it feel like achieving that?
Yeah.
And that's all of that's a cost and an effort. But if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, 3 months, not that long.
No.
It's a little bit challenging. It's not that hard. Like
the first 3 weeks are the most challenging.
Yeah, build some momentum, and then imagine what you could achieve in 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Just when you cut the shit.
When you get to week 6, it starts to become so much easier, and people will stop. Like in the initial sort of like period, for instance, this is from like a social context. In the initial period, people will be like, come out for a beer. Oh no, I'm not drinking. Or come out for a beer. It's like, no, I got to train. Like blah, blah, blah. And they will give you shit. That is how it works. I used to do that all the time. I was that toxic male that was like, oh, you changed. You're a coward.
Do it for the boys.
Do it for the boys. But if you
and now you have a the girls hat on.
The girls. If you
is there something you want to say, mate?
This is my girlfriend's hat. I just really like it. But if like, and
or
there will,
the guys.
The guys. There will always be someone who will like is not on board with it and be like, "Come out for a beer." No, but people will generally stop asking you, and that's when you'll be like, you will feel slightly ostracized. But then you're like, "Wait a second, is going out for a beer on a Friday night going to help me run a marathon?"
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to do it, go ahead. Sweet. If you're doing it every weekend, that's not good.
It's not going to get you there. I have actually a funny story about that. When I first come to to fitness playground, and I just started, and there's quite a few social engagements happen around the gym, which is quite cool, and it's really, really cool community and culture with that. And there was a party on. A couple of times, I'm not the most social person. That's not a surprise to anybody. I did the personality type.
Yeah, I think Mel told me about this.
Yeah. And people don't understand this. And actually, if you're listening and you want to learn a bit more about me, I got 91% introverted on this test. So obviously, it's not an absolute measure, but I am very introverted.
According to this test.
According to the test. And also, I'm 32 years old. I know myself. I'm not like, oh, I don't know.
I didn't realize I was introverted.
Yeah, I know I am. I think it's great. I think it's weird being extroverted. I don't. But I'm how I want to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, so long story short, got invited to a few parties, and from social anxiety, and then also just, being tired and different stresses and stuff like that. I would say no a lot. And Chris Mavros would ask me a lot. And then he started to cotton onto it. He's like, oh, okay, that's just, Matt's not super extroverted. It's fine. We still, he's one of my best mates, and he's very extroverted. And
almost too extroverted.
too extroverted. Actually, he's going to be on next weekend. And there was a party, and I was like, oh, what did you do on the weekend? And he said, and I was like, oh, I didn't get invited. And he's like, yeah, well, if you say no enough, people will just stop asking. And I was like, oh, fair. That's fine.
It's actually a pretty good thing about one of Chris's good. He doesn't have heaps, but one of his good redeeming factors. Sorry, Chris, you're a great guy. I trashed him yesterday, and he's very happy about it.
He doesn't have feelings.
No, of course they disappeared a long time ago.
We won't say why.
One of his great redeeming factors is that he will. It's not like a telling it to you. He's not like a Donald Trump tell it to you straight, but he will just be like, it's like, oh, why didn't I? He's not going to beat around the bush. He's not going to be like, oh, you know, he's just like, you kept saying no, so people stopped inviting you. It's like, it's cool. If you want to come, and they'll invite you.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's, sweet.
Yeah.
Like and I'm more logical now than I was then, but I've always been pretty logical. I was like, oh, yeah, it's fine. I actually don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I was just, it was just to say, and that was one of the things I was going to say before is when you said that how you used to be the guy where you'd be like, oh, you know, and that's completely.
Which, by the way, was more of a signal of my insecurities at the time than it was of anything else.
We're going deep, are we?
Yeah.
So one of the things I didn't have many friends when I lived in Narromine after I left school. Like I still had mates, but I didn't hang around a lot of people until I came to Sydney because in my hometown there was not a whole lot of people who trained like I did. And I stopped drinking for 5 years. I think from about...
Was that like intentional? Did you go, I'm not going to drink? Or was it just, I'm not drinking?
Well, like...
Or there was no reason to drink?
There was no reason to drink. I guess probably subconsciously realised that I do it because I am introverted, I do it to have that social interaction. And then it just didn't hold much value for me and I just wanted to train and that's what I like doing. I don't like being hungover. I drink now, but like I don't get hungover because I know, cool, that's about the limit. I won't go past it. I know that if I have 3 to 4 drinks, I'm sweet, and I drink straight whiskey as well too. So proper country boy.
Yeah.
And
won't drink beer.
Yeah.
He had one sip of a beer at a wedding and he put it down.
I had half a beer, mate. But I had a few more whiskeys then. And I was actually quite disappointed. It was an Irish wedding and there was no whiskey.
Yeah.
That's fair. But what was I going to say? So I didn't hang around a whole lot of people when I was after school, and it's actually helped me a lot from a personal and professional development standpoint because I did read so much. And in fact, when I got to Sydney, I didn't realize...
Isn't that when you learnt to read?
I still can't do it. I do audiobooks and then I don't actually retain a whole lot of information. One fun fact, and we're going to get onto some three random facts. Let's say
I haven't even finished my wearable story.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll segue back to that. One fun fact, I am dyslexic. And
I just bullied someone because he's dyslexic.
What's that?
I just couldn't.
No, you can. Okay, I'm going to tell my favorite joke.
Oh shit!
What do dyslexic zombies eat?
Like Banes or something?
Brian's. I really have to think hard about that because it's very, and particularly it's better when you type it as well too. But like, there's a very good chance that I'm going to type the
brains, and people are like, "What's the joke?"
Yeah, I don't of course I do.
I'll go through the wearables. I'll finish that quickly.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So I wore 3, Whoop 3.0, Apple 3, and Apple Watch Series 3, and the Garmin Forerunner XT. And there was a range of about 400 calories of total daily energy expenditure between all 3. So Whoop was the lowest, Apple was middle, and then Garmin was the highest. In terms of, I did a strength session and a cycle. The Whoop said I burnt about 280 calories in the strength session, and the Apple said I burnt 442 in the strength session. The Garmin didn't track it because it's only for triathlon, but so if you see, like,
it's too good for strength training.
250
triathletes are
150 cows. The one I have now does strength training. 150 cows between the two is like a fairly significant. That is, this protein shake. This protein shake is 300 cows.
Yeah.
So half of this between the two.
And that could be the difference between you dropping half a kilo a week and getting your results. Or if you calculate that out and be like, oh, cool, I can have an extra, 150, 200 calories, then that's you maintaining exactly the same and then going, this diet doesn't work for me. I can't lose weight.
Yeah. And then in the cycle, the Whoop did 360 cows, Apple Watch did 570, and the Garmin did 426. So get like 200 calories between Whoop and Apple. Garmin sitting in the middle there. The irony being that I reckon I probably put away just over 4,000 calories that day and my weight didn't change.
Yeah.
So the thing is here is that none of them are correct. There is a variance between the 3 of them. If you are first of all, if you're measuring your exercise by how much calories you have burned, it's not 2018 anymore. It's time to move on. I feel like that's a trend that's going away more often, or I'm seeing it less, but people still being like, oh, I need to burn calories. You don't need to burn calories. Just exist and you'll be fine. You are burning calories. But
there is a point if you are trying to change body weight, you need to focus on energy output, but you don't need to focus because
on how much.
And calories are a just agreed upon measurement to tell us the one, energy burned, and two, energy in food. And the energy in food as well too, for those interested, there is about a 20% discrepancy between what you actually eat and the calories on there. Yeah, that's fine. It's just, it's consistent, and that's the biggest thing. But
that does actually bring to a great point, because a certain other podcast that is a lot bigger than the one that we're on, not trashing this one, it is just one of the biggest podcasts in the world, had a guy on it, and he was trashing calorie tracking and saying the reason, he says calorie tracking doesn't work because calorie calculators, calorie tracking apps, and your wearable are not accurate. No, correct. They are not accurate. You are 100% correct. But it's where consistency and adherence, and I always bang on that about that to my clients. Don't worry about the numbers. Be consistent. If you are consistent, you will see a change in the numbers.
Even if you're consistently off, but you're consistent, then you can make change from that consistently off point to then get you closer to that. And it's insights give you the data gives you the objective insights, and then you can make informed decisions from that.
And also the data is to supply information to achieve an outcome. The data in of itself is not an outcome.
No. It's just, that's what that is.
Yeah.
It's a snapshot.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hold any more weight than that. It's just, once you can pull feelings away from the data and just look at it, it's like, oh, that's that.
Oh, it changed. Okay, I'm going to change my behavior.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it does take, like, we say that sitting in a position of, we work in the fitness industry
superiority.
And of superiority. We've been doing this for years, but, like, you know, I'm definitely in a position now where, I need to, my weight's gone up a little bit and my body fat's gone up a little bit. I'm just going to take a few carbs out and be a little bit more hungry over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
I'm focusing on performance right now. I need to actually increase the food. It's very easy. I have my diet, my day, the way my day is planned. It's really easy to pull and push when it comes to carbs. That's taken a while to achieve.
Takes time. Also, one thing to think about is that, you know, we live in the most fortunate time ever, bar the World War III about to happen.
Every time is the most fortunate time.
Yeah, until...
Well, actually, if it's buying a house, it was probably the 60s.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's our fault. We weren't born earlier. We get to choose do everything that we do for the most part.
Yeah.
Like, if you're wanting to perform and you do an endurance event, you're picking to do that. Like, don't complain about it. No one cares. No one cares. If you're dieting and you're a little bit hungry, that's good. You get to choose to be hungry. There's many people that are hungry. And
you can choose not to, but you're just going to have to choose a different pain.
And it's just that there is going to be a cost or a price for it, and you have to pay that cost or a price. Otherwise, you don't get the thing you want. It just is what it is.
And typically, the more positive outcomes come from choosing the harder short-term cost, which ends up being better long-term.
Frustrating.
If you take the easy option, it's like, and as much as, you know, it's a cliche, but, you know, you look at any objective data and it is true. If you choose the easy option in the short term, you end up with a worse outcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's
to round that up.
What are some actionable takeaways from using the wearables? Because I think they're very important. I've just started recently wearing a Fitbit.
Wearables, steps are not 100% accurate either, but I won't bother going into that.
But if it's consistent.
If you can hit relatively the same numbers in terms of your actual action over an amount of time, it doesn't matter what the exact number is, but you will end up in the positive. Right?
And I think one thing before we go on to that is everything, these metrics and stuff, they're averages, they're equations, even if we're calculating calories or whatever it might be, heart rate, it's just pretty good calculations and averages that people have agreed to upon over time that will put some sort of numerical value to a thing that is happening in the body.
There's a number that you can chase.
Yeah, and the body does not work like a calculation. No. It's more like a chemistry set than anything.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go, I'm going to burn 150 calories.
Yeah.
It's an energy transfer process. You know, there's lots of complex stuff going on, but no one wants to know all that shit. Like, I'm reading the precision nutrition textbook at the moment. It's really, really cool. But like learning about acetyl-CoA and the, you know, Krebs cycle and stuff like that. I've read it probably 10, 15
Yeah.
times and learned about the Krebs cycle and the Corey cycle. It's really, really hard to remember.
And you don't need to know it.
No, and that all that complex shit boils down to the things that we're talking about. And they're still really, really complex, and they're still really, really subjective, but they're more objective than anything else that we can do. And
if we can build a bit of a plan using some numbers that may or may not be accurate, but if you can adhere to said plan, like every single diet and training program works if you do it.
Yeah.
And so if you can adhere to them, whether they are correct or not, you will see results. If you do not adhere to it, and your reason for not adhering is it's not accurate, you're not going to see results.
Yeah.
But yes, if you're going to wear a wearable, don't take it on face value. Just because it gives you a number does not mean it's correct. But if you can be consistent with it, you will see results.
Yeah, and they make the whole thing more entertaining and more.
They gamify it.
They gamify it, and that's a massive thing. Is like when we enjoy what we're doing and we're interested in what we're doing, we're probably gonna be better at what we're doing.
You just have to be somewhat careful about what you gamify, because I think Whoop realized it, that they originally put a lot of stress on. So they have a thing called strain, which is just essentially a number that a calculation where they put in the amount of energy plus the time that you're active plus the amount of time you're in a stress state, like all together, and they calculate how, like, the strain that you went through on that day, and it's a number out of 21. And originally they that was like the number one metric, and then people became really obsessed with having the highest strain, and then people were like burning themselves out because they were training like 3 times a day. They were doing like CrossFit, and they'd go for a run and then do a weight session and blah, blah, blah. And then people were getting injured because they were stressed, so stressed. And then Whoop changed their focus to recovery. And that's probably been a really good. Now people are gamifying recovery. Like, how can I get my HRV really high? Just have a good sleep, bro.
Yeah. But if you're focusing on recovery, you have to be training. I've had clients that love recovery but never train.
Yeah.
You can't. You have to. You've got to. If you want,
it's a balance.
Yeah, and if you want to see change, and you're not getting results, yes, there can be on one side of the spectrum that you are training too much.
Yeah.
Way too much. 10 sessions a week for 2 hours each or whatever it might be. But make sure that you're doing the actual things that get you. It's great to recover, but if you give me your top 3 things that you think people would need to do to recover better.
I think they would,
without using a wearable.
I think you'd need to spend less time on your phone.
Okay, cool.
I think you'd need to go to bed about an hour earlier.
Yeah, and how much sleep would you get?
I mean, the amount of sleep that you get doesn't really matter. If you go to bed an hour earlier, you will not get an hour more sleep, but you will get better. You will have better sleep. Yeah, typically, sleep architecture. You could do a whole podcast on it, but if you go to bed an hour earlier, you spend less time on your phone. You'll be less time in a stress state, which will allow your body to recover. Mm-hmm. If you go to bed like an hour earlier, and if you eat food for when you need it, as opposed to when you don't, just what you want to eat when you eat. So something I've been saying to my clients recently is I've labeled carbs as PRN, which is the shortened version of a Latin word that means like as per the present need or something, which essentially is like if you're going to eat a bunch of carbs and then sit in an office chair for the rest of the day, not a great idea. Silly. If you're going to eat a bunch of carbs, especially like the carbs you eat at night, a lot of high processed stuff, dessert, chocolate, that kind of thing, and then you want to go to bed, you're not going to recover as well. If you eat that stuff around your training and then you have a pretty chill, lighter meal in the evening, you'll probably recover better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Notice none of those things included foam rolling, ice baths, saunas, that's massage guns, stretching. And
that's all sick, but it doesn't make anywhere near the difference that you think it does, and it definitely won't make anywhere near the difference that you think it does if you're not training. Yeah. Like, I think ice baths are great. I really enjoy ice baths, not to recover. No. I wouldn't get in an ice bath to recover.
Oh, definitely not after a session. Maybe after if I was going on a big run where I do want to decrease my inflammation afterwards, that may be a time for an ice bath.
But to the degree of what it's going to decrease it, it's not going to be. You could also not have that ice bath and still train like an animal.
And also, when I say a big run, I'm talking like 3 hours.
Yeah.
I'm not talking. I went for a 30-minute jog, I'm not going to get an ice bath after that.
But also, I can guarantee you that some of the best marathon runners in the world have never had an ice bath in their life.
Maybe, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because some of them come from like Kenya and they start running because that's just how you get from one village that's 3 hours away to the next village.
Yeah.
And they can continue to do it. So like, I was talking about it with Danny on Wednesday, like majoring in the minors. The minors, don't worry about it. Sleep good, eat according to your calorie
As
needs.
needed.
As needed. Train really hard. Train really, really hard for a short period of time.
You can't recover unless you're training really hard.
No. But all that said, everything is contextual. And if you're a ridiculously stressed person, you work 100 hours a week and...
Our training hard is not the same as other people's.
But it's train hard relative to you.
Exactly, yeah. So what some people... When I describe my week to people, they often are like, are you psycho? And I'm like, probably a little bit. But that is relative to me because I spent a lot of time getting to the point. And I really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. And then, I guess, if you feel like shit, don't train. Like, if you really feel like shit, like, you know, your hands are shaking and you're not as strong as you were the session before, like really not as strong, not just like a little bit tired today and whatever. Like, you can, adjust that session and still turn up anyway. But, you know, you can know, the more you train, the more you know when you can and can't push. Yeah. And if you're not getting stronger, then you are not recovering. And that would be if you're seeing, you know, 5 to 7% decrease across sessions. Yeah. The goal is to progress, not regress. Yeah. But yeah, focus on the training hard, the simple stuff, and the rest will take care of itself. What were you going to say?
Oh yeah, I have like a similar thing. A couple of like guidelines is just like, you know, come in, do 4 sets. If you still feel like you don't want to train, go home. Yeah. It may seem like a waste of time, but it's better than. Like you'll get to see it, and if every time you go, I don't feel like training, and you don't go in. I've had some really great sessions where I've sat on the toilet at the gym for like 20 minutes on my phone because I've been like, I don't want to train. Literally just scrolling, but I'm like, I don't want to do it, and then I've gone out and just hit some PBs because I've been just get over it.
Just get.
Conversely, if you don't feel like training, train, and if you the next day, if you feel even worse, don't train that day.
Yeah, and do something. But I think, and this will go to our chat about injury and training through injury. I think there's always something that can be done. There's always something that can be done. I said earlier that I'm unfortunate enough and fortunate enough to be injured a lot. Like when I rattle off the amount of injuries that I've had, definitely not the most amount of the person has ever had. But then people are like, shit, you've nearly died a few times, and like, how many concussions you've had? Oh, that makes sense. You slow your speech a lot. Yeah. and you can't read. 4? I can't remember how many concussions.
4?
I've had about 5.
I've been out twice.
Yeah, it's a weird experience. Yeah. And broken bones and, you know, car accidents and shit like that. But my worst injury that put me out, that probably started to make me think this way about there's always something that can be done, was when I snapped my shoulder in half, essentially. So I tore my AC joint in my right shoulder, and so really simply the AC joint and the connective tissue around that area is the connective tissue that holds your collarbone onto your shoulder blade. It's pretty important for shoulder stability and stuff like that. And I haven't had it. I had a grade 3 tear, so a complete snap. So my collarbone at the time was sitting about 1.5 inches, 2 inches higher than my shoulder blade.
You had a step deformity?
Yeah.
When it's like the...
Yeah. And it still can move around. So if I press on my SC joint, so that's near where your sternum is, my collarbone moves up because there's nothing holding it in place other than skin.
Yeah. So
when I snapped that playing footy, and I come back from it, and then snapped that playing footy. I had all grand plans of playing professional rugby. And I think we all did. Yeah, we all did. I did all right, but like it probably wasn't ever going to happen, but I was going to give it a crack. Yeah. Anyway, so then I couldn't train upper body as much. If I knew what I know now, I would have been able to get back a lot faster, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. Yeah. But then I was like, cool, what can I train? Sweet. My legs are sweet. So here we are 10 years later, and all I do is squat. So that happened, and I was like, cool, well, okay, I can't train my chest and shoulders how I want to. I can train forearms, I can train calves, I can train abs, I can train legs, I can train this, I can run, I can do whatever it is, I can skip, I can do, all these sorts of things. And then it got taken even further when one of my clients who played really, really high level rugby league, he dislocated his elbow at 17 years old. And he had a professional contract with the Penrith Panthers, and I've told you about this before off air. And he dislocated his elbow. He was 17 years old, and I'm going to have him on. He's got a cool story. 17 years old, playing opens men's for the Narromine Jets. So he should have been in 18s. He played 18s at 16 and then played men's at 17 and then went on to play up to Canterbury Cup for Penrith Panthers. And he had a contract, dislocated his elbow. It was actually my cousin that did it, that he was in a tackle and got pinned in the tackle as my cousin, who was a front rower, like 110 kilos, come in, and his elbow just got caught up and just peeled in half.
Yeah.
2 days later, he was in the gym training. Obviously not his elbow, but I said to him, mate, you've got this professional contract. We don't know what's going to go on with the elbow, but rugby league is very lower body dominant sport. Like it's not going to be a bad thing if you have really big, strong legs. Anyway, and this is actually one of the things I'm pretty proud of. So he was training. I was like, cool, we can pull if at worst we can pull the sled, but you can do split squats, you can do calf raise, you can do Nordic curls, you can do back extension, you can do walking lunges, you can do
leg extension,
whatever it is. And it was in my gym at the time, so we didn't have many machines, but I had like those. I was like, we can do GHD, we can do abs, you can do this, you can do that, And then when he got it to Penrith, he was a halfback at the time, weighed about 80 kilos. He had, no word of a lie, the biggest quads on the field. Genuinely, mate. Like
in Penrith as well. There's a lot of Polynesian.
Yeah, he had the biggest quads on in the field at about 80 kilos. It looks so sick. No upper body. But there's always something that you can train. And so okay, well, and you've had injuries as well too, but all your body could be out, but you can still train forearms, you can still train whatever it is. And
there's very few people on this planet right now that would not benefit from doing strength training. Something.
Just do it. It all adds up.
And it doesn't have to be doing squats. It could be if you're I'm not going to say if you're wheelchair bound, you should be doing more. But my nan who was had a stroke and was wheelchair bound, at her retirement home, they'd give them little dumbbells and they do a little arms workout sat in their chair.
And just keeping things in motion is so key, and it's been a theme of the podcast recently with, I think ever since it started really, it's keeping things in motion. And I guess that same thing goes for training through injury, training through really stressful times at work. Okay, if you're really, really stressed at work, which we all are, don't try and hit a PB on a deadlift. You'll get hurt. Do calves.
Yeah.
Do abs.
Do some low intensity capacity work.
Do something.
On the bike.
Show up to the gym. Go for a walk. Do whatever it is. The biggest thing.
You will feel better.
Yeah, you'll feel better, and
not if you try and PB a deadlift.
No. Don't ever try and PB a deadlift. It's
a waste of time.
And so I guess that was. Thanks for coming to my TED talk.
Yeah.
Where are we going for that? Training through injury. We were talking about.
Yeah.
What's your experience with training with through injury?
I've had my fair share as well. I've had a knee reconstruction. I've now had another surgery on my foot.
Maybe tell us about last year, because you had a bit of issue with the elbow and you had a period where you didn't train.
I still trained. At no point.
Sorry.
Let's go back to October 2022. So I'd signed up I'd done a half Ironman a couple months before. I'd signed up for a full Ironman. And at the time I was swimming 3 times a week. I was running 3 to 4 times a week. I was cycling 2 to 3 times a week, and I was lifting weights 4 times a week. I think my biggest week was something like 22 hours of training, plus also doing 35 PT sessions in a week, going to bed at 9, waking up at 4:30, 5 days a week, that kind of thing. And then I kind of noticed I started to get a little bit of a pain in my left elbow, and it presented somewhat similar to I remember whether it's tennis elbow. Is it tennis elbow that's medial, or golfer's elbow?
Golfer's elbow is medial.
Medial. So it was like golf.
I think it's more backhand for tennis elbow.
It must have been like golfer's elbow.
It's all the same.
It's an elbow pain. Yeah.
Medial epicondylitis.
Yeah, it's an elbow pain. So it presented like that. I was talking to Juan about it, and he's like, you know, I kept on going.
And you couldn't understand him because he doesn't speak English.
kept on going. And then literally like one day I was deadlifting and pulled quite heavy, and I finished it, and I was like, that didn't feel great.
They never do.
Like, it felt great whilst I was doing it, but afterwards it was like, I felt like my forearms were super, super jacked up, and my fingers weren't...
very important.
My fingers weren't like... You know when you like grip something really hard, and then you let go, and your fingers kind of like stay in that position, and then they slowly start to open up. They didn't open up like properly. But my thumb and first two fingers did, but the ring and pinky finger on both hands didn't quite open up properly. And so then, and then the next day I woke up and like pretty much like, actually I know in that session I deadlifted and it didn't feel great. And then I did some Zottman curls where you do the rotation, and I felt a ping in my left forearm, and I'd had that kind of like grippy thing, and I was like, oh, that's not good. So then kind of went for a scan, nothing, X-ray, ultrasound, nothing. Doctor, because I was talking to my housemate about it because he's an EP, and I was asking for some suggestions, and then I went to the doctor. He said, go to the doctor, get a scan, because if you come to us, we'll say, go to the doctor, get a scan. Sweet. Went to the doctor, got a scan, came back, and I go to my housemate, guess what the result was? And he goes, was it a bit of little bitch syndrome? And I was like, yeah, they've come back with nothing. And I can tell you now, right, if you are someone that has had like an injury, and especially it's going to happen with like nervy injuries, because nervy injuries are really hard to diagnose. If you've had an injury and you know you're in pain, and you go to someone and they give you a scan, it can be quite frustrating. So I know this, like sometimes I'm like, oh no, if it just says there's no injury, just, nut up. It can be quite frustrating if you know you have an injury and someone says there's nothing there. I understand that. Finally got it so then I was like, okay, I can't grip at all. So I can't do anything that involves grip. I can't pull at all because my forearms are so jacked up. So pretty much imagine like if you were to do like, it's 3 sets of forearm, like wrist flexion exercises, and you get a really jacked up forearm. That was me at rest, like super jacked up. Couldn't move my ring and pinky finger. They were pretty much stuck to my hand. Could struggle to pick up like weights for clients in the gym. But I was still training. I was still running. I had to stop swimming, and then I had to stop cycling because I almost crashed because I couldn't operate the brakes on my bike.
Arm pump.
Going down a hill at 60 k's an hour and almost flying into a wall because I could not properly operate the brakes.
I've actually done that one morning riding to work.
So I kept running, and I still kept doing strength stuff. So we just went, okay, what can I do? I can still press dumbbells because I don't really have to grip them as much. And it's actually good because dumbbells aren't going to put as much compression on the rest of my body. I can still do machine-based stuff, blah, blah, blah. So I was still training, still getting through it. Eventually got it diagnosed that essentially my shoulders had become so stuck into internal rotation. So again, this isn't... The thing was that if you go to a medical doctor or like most like physios with this kind of thing, they wouldn't understand what it would present as, because unfortunately the way that they look at it, and is an interesting concept that I kind of started to build up in my own mind, and then I'm reading a book that actually talks about medicine 2.0 versus medicine 3.0. Medicine 2.0 is like treatment for the specific acute issue. Medicine 3.0 is you need to, like, if we start treating things, like if we start including positive behaviors now, it's going to stop the issue from popping up. If I had gone to people with the issue that I had, and I did go to people with the issue that I had, they could not understand what it was because they didn't look at, no one at that point had looked at the way I move, had looked at the rest of the rest of my body and how it moved, what was going on, had done any type of a movement assessment. I went to Matt Wall, who operates just a little bit up the road from you.
Could have him on.
Yeah, sports chiro. And I said, here's the issue. It's a weird one. Can you help me? No one's been able to help me figure it out. And he figured it out by just looking at the way I moved, doing a movement assessment. Essentially, my shoulders had gotten so rotated in that I had no movement. I had absolutely no motion there. But was still doing a bunch of stuff that involved going like rotation, internal and external. So swimming and deadlifting and pressing any pulling movements all involve that rotation.
Just before you go on, shout out to Matt Wall. If you need a really, really good chiro, Hills.
I've had 3 injuries that he's figured them out that no one else could. So if you have an issue that no one can figure out, go and see him.
Good chiro, good bloke, great name, really good initials.
Yeah. So he had a look at it and figured out that I was using my elbows to do the rotation that my shoulders couldn't. And because of that, I was putting so much like torque through my elbows because they were rotating far more and with much greater loads than they're supposed to.
Can I make a point on that?
Yeah.
Oh, how much more are you going to say there?
I was just going to say because of that, it started to press on the nerves and it ended up damaging the nerves in the elbows.
Makes so much sense, and it's decent now, better now.
I still have. I don't have the issues. They later found when I was getting my shoulder tested, which was a different nerve issue. They tested my other side just to see what was going on there, and they actually found the damaged nerve on my left side. Okay. So it is damaged, and it won't get better. But it is like my hand is fine now.
Yeah, I definitely have some nerve damage from like the countless shoulder subluxations and stuff like that. But one interesting point there, and just to talk about the tightness and stuff that you just had and then the carry-on effect downstream is one thing that our body has an order that the joints will go into so everything can kind of move efficiently and create stability and then create movement elsewhere. So our joints have an order of mobility, stability, mobility, stability, mobility, stability. And so every other joint will be a mobility joint and every other joint will be a stability joint. And what can happen, and what sounds like it's happened for you, is, so if we look at it and we'll go sort of up the chain, it's going to be more general because it's not going to go into every joint. But if you have a look at your ankle joint, going to have a lot of mobility. You got flexion, extension. You can invert, evert. And then your knee joint has a little bit of rotation, but the most part, so ankle joint mobility, knee joint, a little bit of internal external rotation, but mostly stability and mostly extension and flexion, but it's a stability joint. Hip joint, second most mobile joint in the body, can
move in all planes of motion. It's always moving in all planes of motion.
Yeah. If we look at our lumbar region as a section of joints, it should be a stability joint. It has the ability to flex and extend, a little bit of rotation, a little bit of lateral flexion, but not a whole heap. Thoracic junction, so from rib cage upwards, a lot of rotation, a lot of flexion, extension. Scap should be stability, should be stuck on the rib cage, moves a little bit, but more stability. Shoulder, most mobile joint in the body, most likely to injure it, has the least amount of stability. And then the elbow, it has mobility. They all have mobility, but then it's going to be more of a stability joint. And so what can happen is when one joint that is a mobility joint becomes a stability joint, the next thing down the line, either side, has to take up slack for what that joint's doing or not doing or lacking. And so one of the easiest way you can conceptualize, if anybody's ever seen, like in rugby, where someone gets tackled around the ankles and then someone cleans out over the top or hits their legs, that goodbye ACL, goodbye LCL, goodbye meniscus, because the knee just folds in half in a direction that's not meant to if it's gone from the side. And so that can happen on a very acute level like that, and it can also happen on a very chronic level like that. So if you're stuck in a position of constant internal rotation, you then compound on top of that with, and this is a common thing, compound on top of it with lots of pressing and curling and rowing, and then you're on the bike and you're in flexion, internal rotation, and your elbows, swimming and walking and running and all those sorts of things. All excellent things. Doesn't mean you can't do them. It just means that there was an underlying issue and you needed to fix it, which is obviously what you did.
Which, by the way, I looked. One of the fittest pictures I've ever taken was 2 weeks before that injury occurred.
Yeah,
fittest looking pictures. Yeah, I looked like a fucking weapon, and I'd still show that picture.
Yeah,
there was a time where I had someone be like, "You should put that picture on a dating profile." Like it was in my budgies. They were like, "You should that," because it was looked real fit, but I was in this position, and it is good that you mentioned that as well because. As someone who coaches a lot of runners, I get a lot of people that come to me with knee pain or lower back pain. And it's like
tight ankles.
And then it's like And it's like, okay, well, like your hip is not doing its job and your ankle is not doing its job. Your knee and your lower back are not the issues.
Yeah.
It is the ankle and the hip.
Yeah.
And then someone's like, oh, you need to activate your glutes. It's like, no, it's not a single muscle that is the issue. It is the fact that you have absolutely no mobility or stability in your hip, and so something else is having to cop it. And the funny thing is that because of the issue I had with my foot, in my ankle, which is obviously, as we said, more mobile, I had no mobility there.
Yeah.
So then I started to pop up with these knee issues, and they presented as if I had torn my meniscus. But when I did a meniscus test, it was fine.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, my knee's just copying it at the moment, and that's why the pain's there.
And it could lead to a meniscus tear
over time, exactly.
Because it's just constantly, essentially scrubbing out the inside of the knee or whatever it is.
I got this piece of bone taken out 2 weeks ago, and on Wednesday, the day I got the stitches out, I wanted to test my squat, and I squatted better than I have in a long time.
You just don't have, then my mobility.
I just drop straight into it,
So if you got knee pain, get ankle surgery, and you will be sweet.
Yeah, but to bring back to the point, like, and then sort of like this last year as well, in playing in what is going to end up being my last ever game of rugby, I got absolutely creamed by someone who was probably...
We have a very similar ending to our rugby careers.
Yeah, I was playing at a level that was lower than I probably should have, but not by a huge margin. And I also was like, I'm not trying to be the best player on the field. I'm here to have fun. There was a guy directly opposite me who was playing at a level that was far below what he should have, and he did not have the same
should know that
mantra about playing. And he hit me so hard that the injury that I got from it was, the neurologist said he only ever sees these in people who've had high level car accidents. And there's a picture of me.
So that's a testament of how tough you are.
Yeah,
you didn't die.
I didn't die. But yeah, so I again, nerve damage. So I damaged a nerve in my shoulder, presented as if I had done a whole bunch of structural damage in my shoulder. And then went and got scans, nothing. And it really affected my mental health, was being like, I can't move my arm. I can't train properly. I can't do the thing that I love. And people keep telling me that there's nothing wrong with me. Very frustrating. But then in the end, it was like, you've actually just damaged this nerve. I'll come back in 6 months, and if it's still damaged, we'll see what we can do, was literally the response.
If it's better now, though.
It's better now. It's fine. I went from not being able to do dips, even assisted, to being able to do 3 sets of 10 in about 4 weeks.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it came back really, really quickly.
Well, that's a testament to how quick you can actually recover from something if you have good...
If you're in a good position before the injury, and then you do all the right things whilst you're injured, and then once you get the opportunity to come back from it, you do all the right things.
And keep moving and then have, good coaching and stuff like that. Let's get on to some exercise stuff.
Yeah.
Because we were going to do this one last time, and I want it to be a key focus of the show, because it is about strength and conversations and ultimates and stuff. And I got this idea from Chris Williamson. It's Chris Williamson, the 10 exercises. I'm going to frame it a little bit better. So 10 exercises. What are your favorite 10 exercises? If you could, we won't do that if you could only. What are your top favorite 10 exercises for you, and why?
Personally,
not necessarily what you would give to clients, just for what you got. We can do what you would give to clients as we go, but just.
I really like deadlifting.
Cool.
I know. You feel like a fucking hero at the top of a good deadlift. And when you watch it back and you see how well you move, every single muscle in your body's pumped up, like neck veins are pumping, head's pumping. It's just, and I think it's just a really good measure.
Makes the pipes look.
It does.
Makes the Vietnams look.
Yeah, the Gary swipes are looking perfect. And you like
how many? What's a
like a rhyming slang?
Yeah. Well, what would you refer to that as? Saying
maybe like a rhyming saying, like a colloquialism, or
how many colloquialisms? Fuck, I can't say that. I've actually, one of the things I was going to ask is what are you working on in personal development at the moment? But I'll tell you one of my things, and we'll get onto your 10. Sorry, is that I'm actually doing, since I've started doing this podcast, and hopefully the people can start to hear. I'm starting to work on my enunciation. So I'm not saying and ah.
Nice.
I think I've only said it maybe once or twice this podcast. Nice. And I'm also actually doing like enunciation drills, like the tongue twists and stuff like that. And then
that's cool. I have noticed your speaking has gotten better episode to episode.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. I was practicing it this morning, and then you're talking with a pen in your mouth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going all in on this. I said I'm going to get a sponsor. So your 10 exercises. So one deadlift.
I just like them. It feels sick. I think it's a really, really good measure of strength. I feel like in terms of like a longevity perspective, I feel like if you can deadlift your body weight into your like 60s and 70s, the chances of you living through towards 90s, 100s is so much more. Like that would be it's not a defining risk factor not being able to deadlift your body weight, but if you can, it will indicate that you are probably a reasonable chance you're going to go a little bit longer. So that would be awesome.
More will to live because you can pick stuff up.
Exactly, and you feel like a legend. I love pull-ups. I love. This is going to be fairly narcissistic, but I love to be able to see myself in a mirror whilst I'm doing a pull-up. Yeah, that looks fucking worth it. Pull-ups, dips I've been doing a lot recently.
Supinated or pronated or neutral or just...
I rotate, depending on...
Rotating grip.
No. Actually, I do rotate my grip sometimes, but I rotate between them depending on where my body is at the time. So if I'm a bit tight and wound up and stressed, I'll go for a neutral grip. Mm-hmm. As I start to loosen up a little bit, I'll start to go to more a supinated or like underhand, and then as I start to feel like I want to progress that, I'll go to more like an overhand. And the overhand I feel is the like one I would like to progress to the most. Mm-hmm. That's the one I like to do the most and would want to do lift the most amount of weight whilst I do it. But
I'm a big fan of chin-ups as well, and that will be in my top 10 when you ask me after you finish.
Yeah.
I did chin-ups and pull-ups for a long period of time. We'll get into that in a second, but I was like, chin-ups are the easier one, pull-ups are the hardest one, or pronated.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to get a stronger pull-up than I do a chin-up. And I had a 50-kilo chin-up and I had a 50-kilo pull-up, which is kind of unbalanced, but unbalanced in like the way that most people don't go because it's the hardest thing. You will probably, if you do that, you end up with a bit of elbow discomfort.
Yeah.
A lot of elbow discomfort.
So here's the thing. And like where I have been training recently has some grips that can rotate. So if I am feeling super tight, I will go through that rotation and be very intentional about the way I rotate because I've had that elbow issue and the shoulder issue.
Ring pull-ups are actually a really, really good one.
If you can anything that you can rotate your grip on, if you are feeling like you're super tight or you've got a bit of pain through your shoulder or elbow, drop the weight and focus on the rotation through. It'll help. Yeah,
and I think also that we do have the capability to. I think sometimes people can just be like, oh, it's just this is the grip. I think we do have the ability to do fixed grip in a supinated position and all those sorts of things. But there's other issues there if someone can't. Yeah. Cool. So we've got 2
dips.
Gangster.
Similar, like there's a great line. What's the guy? Dom Mazzetti, I think his name is, and he goes when you're doing your dips, it's like you're teabagging the world with an 80-pound ball sack.
That's the only reason.
You need to know to do dips.
Next exercise. But in all seriousness, why dips?
Dips, from a like stability and like performance perspective, functional perspective, like really good for your shoulders. Mm-hmm. It shows that if you can do a dip properly, it shows that you are in a fairly good position when it comes to the mobility of your shoulder. If you can't dip properly, there's an issue there. That's something that needs to be addressed.
Some people refer to it as the upper body squat, which we know the squat is the greatest exercise of all time in terms of the range of motion that you can do. And
I don't like it when
it's
it is. It's going to bend a lot of joints at the same time, so I can understand there. But I just feel like you get some like douchebaggy like fitness influencer being like, the dip is the squat of the upper body. It's like, dude, it's a dip. It's like saying like Michael Jordan is the Tom Brady of the NBA. No, he's not. He's the Michael Jordan he's the Michael Jordan of the NBA. He's a basketball player. You don't need to compare them. The comparison's not necessary. They are different things.
But it helps classify for people who were on the fence for it, thinking it. Otherwise, if like, oh, squat's sick, then that's sick as well too.
Yeah. Do your dips. Yeah. And
because Dom said.
And because teabag the world.
And two.
That's three. Like an incline dumbbell press. Cool. I think when it comes down to it, if I could only do one chest exercise, it would be an incline dumbbell press, purely from the way that you can manipulate the rotation of your shoulder. It feels like from a skill perspective, it is a little bit easier. I feel like it puts a little bit less compression on me. So from a longevity perspective, I can probably do that more often without having to come in and out of it. And I kind of like it as well. I would do like I like some form of like a horizontal pull. I think machine row you can move a lot, but probably like a cable row I think has some variations that you can use that can be beneficial a lot. So a cable, like a seated cable row, you can do single arm, you can do more of a neutral grip and supinated or pronated. I like that. Obviously, like squats have to be in there.
You have to say it on here.
Something for dips as well, like dips and pull-ups or chin-ups or whichever variation of the pulling up. It's very easy to do anywhere. So you don't need a gym to do it. So I think it's very useful from that perspective. From a squat, I mean, you have to squat. I feel like everyone should squat. I feel like there's less impetus should be placed on the variation of the squat based off how much muscle you can gain from it. And I think more impetus should be placed on from a skill-based perspective where you are at the time. So I'm doing a course at the moment, Prescript Level 1, and we've just gone through some stuff on the hips and sort of like squats. Yes, everyone should be squatting, but we should be like, in terms of if you can't complete the skill at that, like if we were to, the way that they rate it, you can have a different opinion, but the way they rate it is like you have easiest squat is like a counterbalance one, then a goblet, and then I think he didn't have Zercher in there, but Dave put Zercher in there afterwards. Goblet,
front loaded squat,
front squat, high bar back squat, low bar back squat, like that kind of order. If you can't complete a high bar back squat because you don't have the range of motion to get your pelvis to translate vertically whilst keeping a neutral spine, you should not be doing a back squat, regardless of whether or not you feel like it. Like, if you want to avoid injury and you want to train long, like, go do something that involves less skill. Do your hack squats and pendulum squats and leg presses to jack up your legs. Progress the skill. Once you can do a high bar back squat, do a high bar back squat.
I rarely have clients do a back squat.
Yeah, because most of them can't.
No. And they don't need to. It's my favorite exercise, but just because it's my favorite exercise.
If they said, and this is because you said something about what's something you've changed your mind on. I used to have it like I will give them the exercise that they want to do, and now I'm like I won't go straight to the exercise they want to do. I will force them to go through. I will take them through because I know this stuff. The skill-based exercises to get them to the point where they can safely complete the exercise before I give them that exercise. So, and like, maybe you can't front squat as much as you can back squat. Cool. But you can front squat without causing any damage or potential issues down the line, but you can't do that on back squat.
I'd say front squat's more advanced than the back squat, but continue.
I think his thing on like skill based is like
anterior loading. Breaks the core, but from a mobility standpoint, if you were to do a safety bar, I'd say that. But from like an actual front squat standpoint, which is one of my favorite exercises, I don't think anybody needs to do it as well. I think if you're a weightlifter, but that.
I'd probably have a front squat in there because I like
it's good exercise.
Holding my working on just going straight up and down. I like it. So
I think it's excellent. Like, it's be top 5 of my favorite exercises, but I just don't. And it's fine, but I just don't necessarily agree with it being a progression to a back squat because
a regression to a back squat.
But you said it was before.
Yeah, so it would be a regression from.
Yeah, sorry, I was
progress from front
progressing
to
to.
Yeah.
Because from a mobility standpoint, if you when I'm talking front squat as well too, I'm talking full grip front squat because I wouldn't consider a crossbody one.
I think he's just putting a anteriorly loaded.
Yes,
squat
yeah.
as opposed
I
to,
agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 6.
After that, I've been really liking. I really like doing like a half kneeling rotation type thing, whether it's a push or a pull. I feel like that. I don't care what your 1RM rotation exercise is, but
not for it.
I really like doing one of those. I think that's great for a core type perspective. Plus, it helped me with my shoulder and my elbows. And then I haven't really been enjoying. This is going to sound dumb.
I have 7.
Is that 7? Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's how I do it. And then I would do probably like a sort of like reverse crunch of some form. Whether it be like a hanging knee raise or lying on the ground or at various angles of incline or decline, I would do some form of so essentially just spinal flexion by bringing my knees, my pelvis towards my rib cage as opposed to rib cage to pelvis. So knees towards elbows is how I would do that. And then I'd probably just go a like supinating curl.
I'm surprised it's not first, mate.
Here's the thing I was going to say. This is kind of funny. I haven't been enjoying just doing straight arm stuff as much recently.
Fair.
It just hasn't. I just felt like it hasn't been a priority. And I feel like because I'm putting so much into my goal at the moment it's to get strong, but it's to not get injured anymore. Because one of the big things is like the top reason why people fail at exercise programs is in the like long run, or the top reason people aren't getting like results in once they get past that like, you know, consistent amount of time in the gym is the time that they're not in the gym. It's like, might sound a little bit confusing. I'll do it a little bit better. Like, if you're consistently not going to the gym, that's the reason you're not getting the results. Yeah. If you are injured, and you can't train, you're consistently not going to the gym. I'm sick of being in pain. I'm sick of getting injured. I know through endurance events it's going to happen, but I'm trying to do as much as I can to.
There's always a potential for injury. We can walk out right now and get hit by the tram.
Exactly. So I'm trying to limit that. So I'm focusing on a lot of like movement and putting a lot of thought and intention and energy towards moving well, and being able to do movements that I've always seen people do and want to be able to do them as well.
Yeah.
So typically what happens is that the arm stuff comes at the end of the workout and I'm cooked by the time I get there, and I'm like, I just want to get through this and leave. So,
and also like if you're doing all those exercises that you've just said, those 7 exercises, if you're doing dips, you're doing presses, you're doing pull-ups, you're doing rows, you're, from a time perspective, you are training your arms not to its fullest extent. You're not going to build the most amount of muscle in your arms, but you can still train your arms doing chin-ups, and you can still train your arms.
Chin-ups and dips are both. Yeah. You will get bicep and tricep from both.
Yeah, and I think that's where most people should spend their time. Definitely do arms. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But if you're time poor, then they're going to be more effective than arms.
Yeah. But yeah, like a dumbbell supinating curl, and then I do enjoy like a crossbody tricep extension.
Nice.
Okay, yeah. What about you?
Very, very well rounded, mate. Well, I think there's going to be a theme across most people that I talk to. They're going to have very similar exercises.
Yeah.
My top 10, I would have. I'm probably going to be able to change mine as I go across the episodes. But sorry, the volumes. I would have obviously back squat. It's for me. It is my favorite exercise. I think it can be done when. I think it can be one of the more effective exercises for everybody when coached well. I do think that I can coach it pretty efficiently. I've got a decent amount of experience of getting some reps in on it myself. I know what it feels like.
Apologies, guys. As Matt was taking us through his squat, he actually died. Oh, he's back. Oh, hey, man. He made it back.
Right, well, I guess we'll pull it up there. We'll just do a quick little. I'm going to have another chance to do my 10, and we got your 10 in, which was the most important thing. We got some good stuff there.
It was long.
Yeah.
It was good. I reckon we could have gone for another hour or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I do actually.
But the technology got in the way.
That's okay. Cool, guys. Thank you very much for listening. If you got this far, we do really, really appreciate it. I guess we'll be back for more, round 3, volume, however many.
12?
Yeah.
No.
If we do one every
4. We're still going to keep you hanging on our favourite Benji moments.
Yeah. Keep listening. Maybe that might be a goal to get Benji on here.
Oh, fuck.
We'll just sit here and watch Benji highlights with Benji.
Did you just name like my dream?
Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah. I did not realize that was my life's goal until you just said it. Watch Benji highlights with Benji.
Cool.
That's how this started. We used to watch Benji highlights together.
Yeah, just coffee with the boys on a Friday morning. This is nearly as good as it gets because Benji highlights with Benji would probably be as good as it gets. Cool.
We want you to come on our podcast. What for? Going to watch you playing footy like 20 years ago. That's it.
That's about... Wow.
Benji 05. Wow. Next year is 2025. 20 years ago.
Well, actually, speaking of 20 years ago, 20 years ago was the last time the Bulldogs won a grand final. And there is a theory that the Bulldogs are
every 10 years.
Every 10 years, and then they win every 20.
Not going to come true.
Mate, the Fox is going to bring it home for that.
Right. Footy's actually is a quick one. NRL is starting on Sunday with the Vegas games. So last year I correctly tipped the winner of Super Rugby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said it was going to be the Crusaders in a final of Crusaders versus Chiefs.
Yeah.
This year, I'm going to say we've already seen one round, but it's going to be Crusaders versus Chiefs in the final, but the Chiefs are going to win.
Okay, yeah.
In rugby league, I reckon I reckon Brisbane's going to do an NRL and AFL double. In rugby league, the Broncos they're going to win the grand final this year. And in the AFL, the Brisbane Lions are going to win, I reckon, against Carlton.
Yeah.
And here's a side thing as well. Last year, I tipped the Broncos to be a smoky, the Bulldogs to be a smoky to make the 8. I am going back on that. They are not making the 8. They're going to be bottom 4. I guarantee you.
I'll probably go on record if they don't get into the 8 this year, they should be binned from the comp.
Spend that much money and not make the 8. Down there with the Tigers.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Well, they've got Luai now, don't they?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Season.
Next year. Yeah, right.
Doesn't matter. Luai is all those Penrith players are all system players.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about this.
That's why
the only
Bulldogs try to buy Penrith.
Yeah, the only 2 players that have come from Penrith, that come out of Penrith and play better or as good or better when they play for New South Wales is Brian To'o and Liam Martin. All the rest of them, including Nathan Cleary, get worse.
What about Brad Fittler? He was
no in this current team.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so you can buy Stephen Crichton, you can buy Matt Burden, you can buy Billy Kickow, you can buy Jerome Luai, Appy Coruscant.
Don't matter.
They get worse.
Yeah, fair. Big statements. Covering all the big topics.
Anyway, that's us.